Whenever anyone talks to me about Panerai, they're normally talking about one watch in particular. And of course, that is the Luminor. And I understand it. I understand why they think that Luminor is the pinnacle piece for Panerai. I've actually got one right now and it's looking rather gorgeous. But something that I discovered the other day is that this isn't actually the pinnacle piece of Panerai. Welcome back to this new style of Time in the Wrist at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison, as always, and in this new style we kind of just talk about interesting subjects to do with watches, mostly. And something that I found quite interesting about Panerai specifically was their marketing, the way that their marketing has kind of shaped their collections and shaped our perception of the collections. Whenever anybody talks to me about a popular Panerai model or a Panerai in general, they're normally talking about the Luminor. Now, we all kind of know why this is. Sylvester Stallone, the man, Rocky himself, wore the Luminor, and it kind of rocketed Panerai to new levels of fame. But 40 years before the Luminor was even produced, the Submersible hit the shelves. Interestingly enough, the Radiomir was officially launched in 1938, but there are models of these watches going back to 1935 and before, and these models used to be supplied to the Royal Italian Navy, and they could take them underwater, and they had radioactive lume on the dial where they could actually see the watches. But interestingly enough, Rolex used to supply the movements to these watches to Panerai. Fast forward to 1949 and the Luminor name was finally patented by Panerai. This is the watch that we all know and love, the watch that was on Sylvester Stallone's wrist. Now, fast forward a little bit more to the 1990s and Panerai finally opened up to the general public instead of just the military. They were going to sell to the general public, and in 1993 they began to do so. Now, in the 1990s, there was a special watch produced which kind of rocketed Panerai's fame in line with Sylvester Stallone's. They actually produced a watch called the Slytech, and that was given to Sylvester Stallone, and he wore it in quite a few movies, Rambo 4 being one of them. That's the one that I visually remember. I think there was also a movie called Daylight that he wore this in, and he was photographed and seen with this watch, and it rocketed it into fame. Now, yes, the Panerai Luminor is pretty chunky, it's pretty huge. It comes in at 44mm, and that iconic cushion case is massive. The crown guard, the iconic little hook that you've got here on the crown guard, although it's really, really cool, it adds a lot of bulk to that watch. So you do need to be a big man in order to pull off a watch like this. Having said that, it is a statement in style. If you have one of these, you want to show it off. The interesting thing about Panerai, and the reason I wanted to sit and kind of have a conversation with you guys in this new setup, that's what we're doing in this new setup. It's more conversational instead of just reviewing a watch. When we review a watch, we'll be over there at the normal time in their setup. This is more conversational. But when you think of a Panerai, you automatically think of a Luminor. Whenever I talk to anyone about Panerai, they talk to me about the Luminor, thinking that it is the pinnacle focus of Panerai, when that's actually not true. That's just been told to them by Hollywood, by these A-list actors. That's what they envision Panerai looking like because that's what they've seen on a big screen. Actually, the staple product in Panerai's lineup is the Submersible. To back up my point here, to sort of strengthen my point here, I want you to think about the first watch in space. And I can already guess, like this, what that watch is. I bet you £100 that it is an Omega Speedmaster. But actually, did you know that Omega wasn't the first watch in space? It was actually a Heuer. That is the first Swiss watch that went to space. It was a Heuer. I can get the exact model number. I'm sure we've done another video about it, but I'll get the model up here if you want to see that. But it's interesting because you don't make that connection. And I've got another one. Do you know the first watch that James Bond wore in the first movie, the first James Bond movie, where he wore a watch? What watch did he wear? Because it wasn't an Omega, it was actually a Rolex Submariner. But through the marketing that Omega have done around James Bond, you automatically think that James Bond wears an Omega. And it's just the influence that Hollywood can have. Marketing's a great thing, but I would always back it up with research. And on this one, I was wrong. I honestly thought the pinnacle point of Panerai was this model, the Luminor, but it wasn't. Before we go on to the specs of the watch that I'm actually holding, and we'll cover a little bit of the details, just briefly of the watch I'm holding, I just want to say a huge thank you. Because of you guys, we're allowed to do this. We can have conversations. We don't need to just keep reviewing watches. This is what I love to do. I love reviewing watches, but I also like having those conversational points with you. And the reason that we're allowed to do that is because you guys are choosing Chisholm Hunter for your luxury watches. We are authorized retailers of Panerai and many, many more brands, and I just want to thank you for making this dream, because it was kind of a dream at the start, and possibility and a reality. Thank you. In my hand at the moment is probably the most iconic Panerai. It's the one that everyone, whenever anyone speaks to me about a watch, a Panerai that they want, it's normally this one. It's the PAM 01313. And yes, I am a nerd. I memorize model numbers. You know, in the industry, that's just kind of what we do. It has the iconic cushion cut case. That case that everyone loves, and when they see, they recognize as a Panerai. It also has the iconic little latch just here that supports that crown. And it has the blue dial and comes in at 44 millimeters in diameter. To be honest, this is just too big for me. It's just too chunky a watch. And I don't think I could pull it off. You need to be a bigger man in order to pull this off. I'm quite skinny. Sylvester Stallone is absolutely jacked and ripped, so there's no wonder that he could pull this watch off. The strap on this watch is a blue leather strap, and I understand leather for more dressy watches, and I understand that they're trying to give it a more dressy feel, but to me, this is a diving watch. It's one of those watches that's chunky, it's hard, it's durable, and I would just put a rubber strap on it, because they have a brilliant selection of rubber straps, actually. And the white rubber strap, surprisingly enough, I just think it looks awesome. It's one of the most obnoxious, loud things you could probably buy, but in my eyes, it looks pretty cool. The movement in this particular Panerai is the P.9010 caliber. This is created by Panerai and has 31 joules, beats at a frequency of 28,800 VPH. And has a 3-day power reserve. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to that movement than I've just covered. There's also a lot more to this watch than I've just covered. But this video isn't about specifically this watch. It's about the impact that marketing can have on a brand. I find that really, really interesting, actually. Coming from myself, because I was in marketing for so many years, and I also do influencer marketing from now and again on my personal profile, I just find it really interesting, the impact that can have on someone's journey, on someone's watch journey. So the next time you buy a watch, the next time you're thinking of buying a watch, have a think. Have you been advertised to? Have you been sold a watch subliminally without you even knowing you've been sold the watch? It's quite an interesting thing to think about. Thank you guys so much for watching this Time in the Wrist episode at Chisholm Hunter. This is our new setup where we have conversations about watches and what's going on in the wicked watch world. I'll see you soon.